Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're unpacking The Harvest of Time, a guide to patient wealth. But before we even touch on things like financial plans or monthly budgets, I want to immediately challenge your financial intuition with a pretty famous mathematical thought experiment. It's a super simple scenario, actually, but your answer is going to reveal exactly how you view money. You ready?
Okay, let's dive into this. If I offered you $1 million, cold, hard cash right in your hand today, or a single, solitary penny, but that penny doubles in value every single day for an entire month, which one are you going to choose? Now, most people, quite naturally, jump straight for the $1 million, right? It's immediate, it's tangible, and it feels like instant security. But if you take that quick million, you're actually leaving an absolute fortune on the table. Let me show you why almost everyone gets this completely wrong.
So here is the punchline. If you went with that doubling penny, by day 30, that single cent has compounded into an astonishing $5,368,709.12. Just let that sink in for a second. On day 10, you only have about $5. Day 20, still just a little over $5,000. But those final few days of doubling, man, that is where the absolute magic happens. This perfectly proves the massive, often totally invisible power of building wealth slowly. Small growth, given enough time, becomes absolutely enormous.
And that brings us to the core metaphor of our explainer today. Wealth is basically like growing an oak tree. We see these overnight millionaires on social media all the time, right? They're constantly selling this illusion of instant success. But true wealth, it's not an overnight lottery win. It isn't a viral crypto coin, and it's definitely not a lucky gamble. It's a slow, growing tree. And growing it requires immense patience, thousands of completely ordinary decisions, and, well, a whole lot of time.
So, the crucial point is, we really have to stop confusing income with wealth. They are entirely different things. Having a really high income is absolutely not the same thing as being wealthy. Income is literally just the money flowing into your bank account. Wealth, on the other hand, is the money that actually stays there. It's the assets you accumulate by consistently spending less than what you're making. You can easily have a massive income and zero actual wealth. Let me give you a very real-world example to kind of paint the picture here.
Think about person A. They're pulling in a fantastic $250,000 a year. They're driving the luxury car, living in the massive house. Basically, they look incredibly rich. But they're spending $255,000 a year. Their net wealth is essentially zero. They're secretly drowning in debt, literally just one bad month away from total financial disaster. Now contrast that with person B. They earn a much more modest $70,000, but they live simply, they only spend $45,000, and they invest that remaining $25,000. 20 years down the line, person B is going to be vastly wealthier than person A. It just proves the golden rule. Wealth is about what you keep, not just what you make.
To actually become person B, you've got to understand the 4 practical stages of wealth building. Stage 1 is simply to earn. You need a reliable income, a job, a business, a side hustle, because, well, you obviously can't invest what you don't have. Once you're earning, you move right into stage 2, spends less than you earn. This is totally behavioral. You have to create a surplus. After that, we hit stage 3, save. Look, before you invest a single dime, you need a cash emergency fund to cover things like random medical bills or surprise car repairs. Saving acts as your shield, right? It protects your money so you don't end up having to sell your actual investments during a crisis. And finally, we reach stage 4, invest. If saving is your shield, investing is your absolute engine. It's what actually puts all that money to work.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how those stages play out over a lifetime, mapping right back to our oak tree metaphor. On day 1 of investing, you see absolutely nothing exciting. Year 1, it's just a tiny little sprout. But year 5, okay, it's a sapling. It's growing slowly, but it's still pretty vulnerable. And honestly, this normalizes those slow, quiet early stages of your financial journey. It's supposed to be slow. Because by year 20, it's a really strong tree. And by year 50, it is completely massive and unshakable. But you might be wondering, what is the sunlight and water that's actually feeding this tree?
It's compound interest. This is the absolute secret engine of wealth. It is the literal snowball effect in action. You invest a little bit of money, and it earns interest. But then it does something truly magical. That new interest starts earning its own interest. At first, the snowball is tiny, kind of hard to push. But as it rolls down the hill, it gathers more snow, getting heavier and faster until it becomes a completely unstoppable force. Compound interest just exponentially accelerates your growth over time, doing all the heavy lifting for you. To truly wrap your head around this engine, we have to look at some totally mind-bending math regarding time.
Let's say student A starts investing just $200 a month at age 20, but at age 30 they completely stop, like they never add another dime. Meanwhile, student B waits all the way until age 30 to start, but they diligently invest $200 every single month for the next 30 years, right up to age 60. Even though student B invested for 2 extra decades, student A can still finish with way more money. Crazy, right? Why does that happen? Because student A's early dollars had 10 extra years of compounding. Time, not just cash, is without a doubt your greatest financial asset.
Now, I know exactly what you might be thinking. If the math is really this simple, why isn't everybody just walking around wealthy? Well, here is the uncomfortable truth. Wealth is actually pretty boring. The actual day-to-day process of getting rich is highly unglamorous. It's setting up automatic investments. It's budgeting every single month. It's avoiding credit card debt like the plague. It's living below your means and just holding on to your investments for decades. It is not flashy at all. It's repetitive. And because it's boring, people get distracted and they end up interrupting the process.
The absolute biggest distraction, and frankly the worst enemy of wealth building, is something called lifestyle inflation. This is that super dangerous urge to upgrade your life every single time your paycheck goes up. You get a $500 raise, and suddenly, oh, you need a nicer car, or a bigger apartment, or designer clothes. Your expenses just instantly rise to match your new income, which means your actual savings stay exactly the same. Your wealth building just stops dead in its tracks.
Let's move to Jake and Emma and see how this builds out in the real world. They both get a really nice bonus at work. Now, Jake instantly falls victim to lifestyle inflation. He goes out and buys luxury wheels for his car and a brand new, super expensive watch. Boom, the money is just gone. Emma, however, takes a totally different path. She pays off some lingering debt, puts some cash in her savings, and invests the rest. She kept it boring. Fast forward 10 years. Jake just has an outdated watch and some scuffed up rims. Emma, on the other hand, has actual assets that are literally generating more money for her while she sleeps.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how clearly it separates the social media myths from actual reality. Get-rich-quick schemes, they demand a gambling mindset. They're incredibly high risk, driven by emotional decisions, and fueled by these overnight promises that almost always end in failure. Build wealth slowly, however, is much lower risk. It relies on a rock-solid long-term mindset, highly disciplined decisions, and decades of steady growth. One is a proven, boring system, and the other is literally just a lottery ticket.
So if we just strip away all the noise, we're left with the core mathematical equation that governs all long-term financial success, the wealth formula. And it's incredibly straightforward. Income minus expenses equals your savings. Then you take those savings, add time, and combine it with investing, and that equals wealth. Simple? Yes, absolutely. Easy? Not always, because it definitely requires some serious behavioral discipline. But the formula itself is totally undisputed.
Honestly, you can think of building wealth a lot like baking a cake. You absolutely must have 3 specific ingredients: money, time, and patience. If you try to bake a cake and just leave out the flour, well, you're going to have a total disaster in the oven. It's the exact same thing here. If you have money and time, but zero patience, meaning you panic and sell off your investments every single time the stock market takes a little dip, the entire recipe fails. Consistency and patience are the superglue that holds this whole formula together.
Which brings us to the most important question of this entire explainer. What is your wealth plan starting today? Because real wealth isn't created in a single lucky moment. It's built one smart, boring decision at a time. So I challenge you right now, find just one unnecessary expense you can cut this month and redirect that money straight toward your emergency fund or your investments. Start planting your oak tree today. And if you want to dive deeper into the exact numbers behind all this, join me for our next explainer where we're going to break down the precise millionaire math you need to know. Until then, keep it boring, be patient, and let time do the heavy lifting.